The barbecue sauce was burning on the grill when my wife delivered the punchline that would change everything. Alicia stood there in her designer sundress, wine glass tilted at that practiced angle that screamed, "Look how sophisticated I am," and announced to our entire neighborhood gathering, "Who wants to trade my husband? He comes with low maintenance and no ambition." The laughter rippled through our backyard like a wave of acid. I stood there holding the spatula, watching 23 people I'd considered friends chuckle at my expense. But it was Dominic's response that really twisted the knife. Our neighbor, all 6'2" of his construction worker frame, grinned and shot back, "I'll take him off your hands, Alicia. When should I pick him up?" More laughter, louder this time. I forced a smile and flipped another burger, my knuckles white around the spatula handle. The thing about being the butt of everyone's joke is that you're expected to laugh along, play the good sport, be the lovable loser who takes it all in stride. "Careful what you wish for, Dom," I said, keeping my voice light. "I might just take you up on that." But inside, something had shifted, something cold and calculating that I hadn't felt since my boxing days, when I'd learned that the best fighters weren't the strongest. They were the ones who could take a beating and still think clearly enough to find their opponent's weakness. The party continued around me, but I was somewhere else entirely. I watched Alicia work the crowd, her perfectly practiced laugh punctuating every conversation. She moved like a politician's wife, touching arms, leaning in conspiratorially, making everyone feel special. Everyone except me. Richard, my old college buddy, wandered over to the grill. "Don't let her get to you, man. She's just showing off for the new neighbors." "Which new neighbors?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "The Hendersons. Just moved in last week. Big money, apparently. She's trying to make an impression." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I glanced across the yard where Alicia was deep in conversation with a couple I didn't recognize. The woman wore jewelry that probably cost more than my car, and the man had that soft look of someone who'd never worked with his hands. Old money. The kind of people Alicia desperately wanted to be. "She's always trying to make an impression," I muttered. "Maybe you should try making one too," Richard said, but not unkindly. "When's the last time you two did something together? Just you and her?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. I honestly can't remember. That should have been a red flag right there, but I was too busy feeling sorry for myself to see it. Instead, I focused on the burgers, on the mechanical process of cooking meat and pretending everything was normal, pretending I hadn't just been publicly humiliated by the woman who'd promised to love and honor me 12 years ago. The evening dragged on. More jokes at my expense, more wine for everyone else, more fake smiles from me. By the time the last guest left, I felt like I'd been through 10 rounds with a heavyweight. "That went well," Alicia said, kicking off her heels in the kitchen. The Hendersons seemed impressed. "Good for them." She shot me a look. "What's your problem?" "My problem?" I set down the stack of dirty plates harder than necessary. "Maybe my problem is being turned into a comedy routine for your entertainment." "Oh, please, you're being dramatic. It was just a joke." "Right, just a joke, like everything else about our marriage." She paused in the middle of loading the dishwasher. "What's that supposed to mean?" I could have backed down then. Should have, probably. But something in her tone, that dismissive, patronizing edge, pushed me over the line. "It means I'm tired of being your punchline, Alicia. I'm tired of you treating me like some kind of embarrassing relative you're stuck with. I don't treat you like... You do, every chance you get. In front of our friends, our neighbors, your coworkers. I'm always the one who doesn't measure up, the one who's holding you back from your brilliant career." She slammed the dishwasher shut. "Maybe because you are holding me back. When's the last time you showed any ambition, any drive? You sell houses, Jake. You sell houses and come home and watch television and act like that's enough. It used to be enough for you." "Well, maybe I've grown up." The words hung in the air between us like a challenge. I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and realized I was staring at a stranger. When had she become this person? When had I become someone she was ashamed of? "Fine," I said quietly. "Message received." I walked out of the kitchen, leaving her standing there with her mouth half open like she wanted to say something else. But what was left to say? She'd made her position clear. I was the problem. I was the embarrassment. I was the one who needed to change. Later that night, lying in bed while she scrolled through her phone beside me, I stared at the ceiling and tried to figure out when everything had gone wrong. We'd been happy once, hadn't we? Or maybe I'd just been too stupid to see the signs. Her phone buzzed with a text message. She smiled at whatever she was reading, then quickly typed a response. Another buzz. Another smile. Who's texting you this late? I asked. Just Susie. Girl talk. But something about the way she said it, the way she angled the phone away from me, made my stomach tighten. I'd been a real estate agent for 8 years. I'd learned to read people, to spot the tells that meant someone was lying, and my wife was definitely lying. I closed my eyes and pretended to sleep, but my mind was racing. The humiliation from earlier had faded, replaced by something sharper, something that felt almost like relief, because now I had a focus for all the anger and resentment that had been building for months. If Alicia wanted to play games, I was ready to play. But she might not like the rules I had in mind. The next morning, she was gone before I woke up. A note on the kitchen counter said she had an early meeting and wouldn't be home until late. Don't wait up. I sat there drinking coffee and staring at that note, and for the first time in years, I felt completely awake, alert, like a boxer who'd been taking punishment for 11 rounds and suddenly saw an opening. My phone rang. A client wanting to see a house, back to the real world, back to my allegedly pathetic career selling real estate. But as I got dressed and prepared for another day of being Jake the underachiever, I found myself smiling. Because underachievers, I'd learned, were often underestimated, and being underestimated could be a very powerful thing. 3 days after the barbecue disaster, I made the discovery that would change everything. Not through some elaborate spy operation or hired detective, nothing that dramatic. Just pure, dumb luck and my wife's carelessness. I was looking for our insurance papers in Alicia's home office when I knocked over her laptop bag. The computer tumbled out, already open, the screen flickering to life. And there it was, her email inbox displaying a conversation that made my chest feel like it was caught in a vice. The messages were from Dominic, my neighbor, my supposed friend, the man who joked about taking me off her hands just 3 nights earlier. Can't wait for this weekend, his latest message read. Jake will never suspect. Guy's completely clueless. Alicia's response? I know. It's almost too easy. He's so wrapped up in his own little world, he doesn't notice anything. Saturday can't come fast enough. I sat down hard in her desk chair, staring at the screen. There were dozens of messages, going back months, plans for secret meetings, complaints about me, intimate details that made my hands shake with rage. But it was the most recent exchange that really got to me. Dominic. Maybe it's time to tell him. Put him out of his misery. Alicia. Not yet. I need to make sure everything's in place first. The house, the accounts, everything. Then we can drop the bomb. I scrolled up, reading more. They'd been planning this for 6 months. 6 months of lies. Of her coming home and kissing me hello while plotting my destruction. 6 months of me being the oblivious husband, the punchline, the fool. There were photos too. Pictures of them together at restaurants I'd never been to. Hotels I'd never seen. Alicia looked happier in those photos than she'd looked with me in years. My first instinct was to confront her immediately. Storm into her law office, throw the evidence in her face, and watch her squirm. But something held me back. Maybe it was my old boxing coach's voice in my head. Don't throw wild punches, kid. Wait for your opening. Instead, I forwarded the entire email chain to my own account, then carefully closed the laptop and put it back exactly where I'd found it. My hands were surprisingly steady. The rest of the day passed in a haze. I showed 3 houses to a young couple, smiled and nodded through their questions about school districts and property taxes, and somehow managed to act like a normal human being. But inside, I was planning. That evening, Alicia came home with takeout Chinese food and a story about her busy day at the law firm. She seemed relaxed, almost cheerful. Why wouldn't she be? Her secret was safe, her plan was working, and her husband was still the same clueless idiot he'd always been. How was your day? She asked, settling onto the couch with her lo mein. Productive, I said. Very productive. She looked at me strangely. You seem different, more, I don't know, alert. Just had a good day, I guess. Closed a deal, got some things figured out. That's great, honey. But she was already reaching for her phone, probably to text her lover about her boring evening with her boring husband. I watched her scroll through messages, occasionally smiling at something on the screen. The casual cruelty of it was breathtaking. Here I was, sitting 3 feet away from her, and she was flirting with another man right in front of me. I'm thinking about taking a weekend trip, I said suddenly. Her head snapped up. What kind of trip? Just some time away. Clear my head. Maybe visit my brother in Chicago. This weekend? The alarm in her voice was barely concealed. Maybe. Why? No reason. It's just, we should spend more time together, work on things. I almost laughed. Work on things, right. Don't worry about it. I'm sure you can find something to keep you busy. She relaxed visibly. Well, if you think it would help, sometimes space is good for a relationship. Space. That was one way to put it. Later that night, after she'd gone to bed, I sat in my home office and studied the emails again. The sheer scope of their deception was impressive, in a twisted way. They'd thought of everything. Cover stories, alibis, even a plan for how to divide up our assets after the divorce. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated me. See, the thing about being in real estate is that you learn a lot about people. You learn how they think, what motivates them, what they're afraid of. You learn to spot weakness and exploit opportunity. And most importantly, you learn that information is power. I started making lists. Every person mentioned in their emails, every restaurant, every hotel, every detail of their affair. I cross-referenced dates with my own calendar, remembering all those nights Alicia had worked late or gone out with girlfriends. The pattern was clear once you knew what to look for. Then I started making phone calls, quiet inquiries to mutual friends, casual questions about who'd been seen where and with whom. I was amazed how much people were willing to share once you got them talking. Oh yeah, I saw Alicia at Romano's last month, Richard's wife Nikki told me when I called to thank her for coming to the barbecue. She was with some guy, tall, dark hair. I figured it was a work thing. Probably was, I said. She's been putting in long hours lately. Must be nice having such an understanding husband. I would have marched over there and demanded to know who he was. Different strokes, I said, but I was taking notes. By the end of the week, I had a complete picture of their affair. Not just the when and where, but the how and why. I knew which of our friends suspected something. I knew which restaurants they frequented. I knew that Dominic had been bragging to his construction crew about his high-class lawyer girlfriend. Most importantly, I knew exactly when they were planning their next rendezvous, Saturday afternoon, while I was supposedly driving to Chicago. I had 48 hours to prepare, 48 hours to plan the perfect revenge. The old Jake would have confronted them directly, probably made a scene, definitely made a fool of himself, but the old Jake was gone. In his place was someone harder, smarter, and infinitely more patient. Someone who understood that the best revenge wasn't getting mad. It was getting even. Saturday morning arrived gray and drizzly. Perfect weather for what I had planned. Alicia was practically vibrating with excitement as she helped me load my overnight bag into the car. Drive safely, she said, kissing my cheek with what I now recognized as relief rather than affection. Give my love to your brother. Will do. You sure you'll be okay by yourself? Oh, I'll find something to keep me busy, maybe catch up on some reading. Right. Reading. If that's what they were calling it these days. I drove exactly 3 blocks, then doubled back and parked my car in the garage of a house I had listed 2 streets over. The owners were in Florida for the winter, and I'd been keeping an eye on the place. Perfect cover. From there, I walked back through the woods that bordered our neighborhood, staying out of sight until I reached the old oak tree in the Hendersons' backyard. It had a perfect view of both my house and Dominic's, and the branches were thick enough to hide me completely. I didn't have to wait long. At 11:30 a.m., Dominic's truck pulled out of his driveway. He was dressed better than usual, khakis instead of work jeans, a button-down shirt that actually looked ironed. 20 minutes later, he returned with coffee and pastries from the expensive bakery downtown, the kind of place Alicia always wanted to go, but I considered overpriced. At noon exactly, my wife emerged from our house wearing a sundress I'd never seen before. She practically skipped across the yard to Dominic's back door. I sat in that tree for 3 hours, watching and waiting and feeling my anger crystallize into something cold and precise. This wasn't just about the affair anymore. It was about the lies, the humiliation, the months of being treated like a fool in my own home. But I wasn't the fool anymore. At 3:15 p.m., I climbed down from my perch and made my way to the local electronics store. The kid behind the counter was maybe 19, with enthusiasm that bordered on manic when I explained what I needed. "Oh man, you're going to love this setup," he said, showing me a collection of tiny cameras and recording devices. "This stuff is practically invisible, and the audio quality is amazing. You doing some kind of investigation?" Something like that. By evening, I had everything in place. Cameras in the living room, bedroom, and kitchen. Audio recorders in locations they'd never think to check. Everything wireless, everything hidden, everything perfectly legal since it was my own house. The hardest part was acting normal when Alicia got home. She was glowing, practically humming with satisfaction, and it took every ounce of self-control I had not to grab her by the shoulders and scream the truth in her face. Instead, I told her about my fictional day with my brother, made up stories about his kids, his job, his wife's new hobby. Alicia nodded along, clearly not listening, probably replaying her afternoon with Dominic in her head. "I'm glad you had a good time," she said when I finished my elaborate lie. "You seem more relaxed." Yeah, it was exactly what I needed. That night, she was more affectionate than she'd been in months. Guilt, probably, or maybe just the afterglow of her affair making her feel generous. I played along, but inside I was counting down the hours until I could put the next phase of my plan into motion. Sunday was torture. Alicia was back to her normal self. Distant, critical, treating me like an inconvenience. But now I could see it for what it really was. An act. She was playing the role of the dissatisfied wife to justify what she was doing, making me the villain in her own story so she could feel better about her betrayal. Monday morning, she left for work early again. "Big case coming up," she explained. "Might be late tonight." "No problem. I'll grab dinner with Richard." She seemed pleased by this, probably because it meant more time for her to text with her lover without me looking over her shoulder. Instead of calling Richard, I drove to the boxing gym where I'd been training on and off for the past few years. Mickey, the old trainer who ran the place, looked surprised to see me. "Twice in 1 week? You training for something special?" You could say that. I started wrapping my hands, muscle memory taking over. "Mickey, you ever been married?" "3 times. Why?" "What did you do when you found out they were cheating?" He stopped what he was doing and looked at me hard. "This ain't hypothetical, is it?" "No." First wife, I beat the crap out of the guy. Spent 6 months in county lockup and she divorced me anyway. Second wife, I begged and pleaded and promised to change. She left me for the same guy a month later. Third wife, he grinned, showing teeth that had seen too many fights. Third wife, I got smart. Gathered evidence, hired a good lawyer, and took her for everything she was worth. And been happily single for 15 years. I spent 2 hours on the heavy bag, working out months of frustration and rage. With each punch, I felt myself getting stronger, more focused. By the time I left, I knew exactly what I was going to do. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. No violence, no illegal activity, nothing that could come back to haunt me. Just good old-fashioned public humiliation, delivered with surgical precision. Tuesday evening, I made the first move. Alicia was in her office, probably texting with Dominic, when I knocked on the door. "Hey, I've been thinking about what you said at the barbecue, about me lacking ambition." She looked up, surprised. "Oh, okay. You're right. I have been coasting, taking the easy path. But I want to change that." "Really?" She seemed skeptical, but there was a flicker of something else in her eyes. Hope, maybe, or fear that her justifications were about to crumble. "Really. In fact, I'm planning something special. A surprise that's going to change everything." "What kind of surprise?" I smiled. "If I told you, it wouldn't be a surprise, would it?" That night, she seemed nervous, distracted. She kept glancing at me like she was trying to figure out what I was up to. Good. Let her wonder, because the surprise I had planned was going to be spectacular. And unlike her little secret weekend getaways, this one was going to have an audience. The beauty of small-town gossip is that it spreads like wildfire, but only if you light it properly. I'd learned this during my 8 years selling real estate in our little suburban paradise. The right word to the right person at the right time could make or break a deal. Now I was about to put that knowledge to a very different use. It started with Mrs. Patterson, our 70-something neighbor who knew everything about everyone within a 6-block radius. I found her Tuesday morning, watering her prize-winning roses. "Morning, Mrs. P. Beautiful Flowers, as always." "Oh, Jake, how are you, dear? I heard you and Alicia had quite the party last weekend." "We did indeed. Actually, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. I'm planning another gathering, something special." Her eyes lit up. Mrs. Patterson lived for social events, especially ones where she could be among the first to know the details. "What's the occasion?" "Well," I said, lowering my voice conspiratorially, "I can't say too much, but let's just say I'm planning to make some big announcements. About my career, my future, some changes that are long overdue." "How exciting. When?" "This Saturday, afternoon barbecue, just like last time. But this one's going to be different. This one's going to be memorable." By Wednesday morning, half the neighborhood knew about my mysterious big announcement. The other half found out by evening. The phone calls started Thursday. "Jake, it's Richard. What's this I hear about some kind of announcement party?" "Just a little gathering. Nothing fancy." "Come on, man. Everyone's talking about it." "What's going on?" "You'll have to wait and see like everyone else." The beautiful thing about secrets is that people always assume they're good news. Promotion, pregnancy, lottery winnings. Their imaginations filled in the blanks with happy possibilities. No one suspected that my announcement would be anything other than positive, except Alicia. She cornered me Thursday night, her lawyer instincts finally kicking in. What exactly are you planning for Saturday? Just a party. I thought you'd be happy. You're always saying we should entertain more. But what's this about an announcement? People are calling me at work, asking questions I can't answer. It's a surprise, remember? For both of us. That last part was technically true, though not in the way she thought. Friday was the longest day of my life. Alicia was clearly agitated, pacing around the house, making phone calls I couldn't quite overhear. At one point, I caught her on the phone with Dominic, her voice urgent and worried. I don't know what he's planning, she was saying. He's been acting strange all week. Different, like he knows something. I made sure to walk past the doorway just as she said it, giving her a cheerful wave. The look of panic on her face was almost worth the months of humiliation. That evening, I made one final preparation. I called my brother in Chicago, the real one, not the fictional visit I'd invented. Tom, I need a favor, a big one. What's going on, Jake? You sound weird. I can't explain everything right now, but I need you to drive down here tomorrow. Bring Lisa and the kids if you can. There's something I have to do, and I need family there when I do it. This sounds serious. It is. The most serious thing I've ever done in my life. Are you in some kind of trouble? Not the kind you're thinking of, but I need to know you'll be there. Can you do that for me? There was a long pause. Tom and I had always been close, despite the distance between us. He'd been the best man at my wedding, the first person I'd called when I got my real estate license, the one who talked me through every major decision of my adult life. We'll be there, he said finally. Whatever this is about, we'll be there. Saturday morning dawned clear and bright, as if the universe itself was cooperating with my plan. Alicia was a nervous wreck, changing clothes 3 times and checking her phone every 5 minutes. Maybe we should cancel, she said as I fired up the grill. I'm not feeling well. Might be coming down with something. Too late now. People are already starting to arrive. And they were. Mrs. Patterson was first, of course, carrying a covered dish and wearing her best gossip-gathering expression. Richard and Nikki came next, followed by the Hendersons and half a dozen other neighbors. Even some of Alicia's co-workers showed up, drawn by curiosity and the promise of drama. Dominic arrived fashionably late, looking uncomfortable in a polo shirt that was trying too hard. He nodded at me with what I'm sure he thought was casual friendliness, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes kept darting to Alicia. My brother's family pulled up just as I was putting the first round of burgers on the grill. Tom took one look at my face and knew something major was about to happen. You okay, little brother? I will be, I said. In about an hour, I will be. The party followed the same pattern as the previous weekend, but with an undercurrent of anticipation that was almost electric. People kept asking about my announcement. When I was going to make it, what it was about, I deflected every question with a smile and a promise that all would be revealed soon. Alicia stuck close to my side, playing the supportive wife role to perfection, but I could feel the tension radiating from her like heat from the grill. She knew something was wrong. She just couldn't figure out what. At exactly 3:00 p.m., I turned off the grill and called for everyone's attention. Friends, neighbors, family, I began, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet backyard. Thank you all for coming today. As many of you know, I promised to make an announcement, something that would change everything. The crowd leaned in, expectant smiles on their faces. Alicia's hand found my arm, her grip tight enough to leave marks. But before I get to that, I continued, I want to talk about marriage, about trust, about the promises we make to each other and what happens when those promises are broken. The smiles began to fade. A few people exchanged glances. Alicia's grip on my arm tightened. You see, I've learned some interesting things lately, about honesty, about loyalty, about what happens when the person you trust most in the world decides that you're not worth their respect. Jake, Alicia whispered urgently, what are you doing? But I was just getting started. What I'm doing, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, is finally telling the truth. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, already cued to the first of many screenshots I'd prepared. The crowd was silent now, sensing that whatever was coming next wasn't going to be pleasant. 2 weeks ago, at this very gathering, my wife made a joke about trading me in for a newer model. Everyone laughed, including me. But what I didn't know then was that she'd already found her replacement. Alicia's face went white. Jake, please, don't do this. Don't do what? Tell our friends and neighbors that you've been having an affair with Dominic for the past 6 months? That you've been planning to divorce me and take half of everything I've worked for? That you've been laughing about what a clueless fool I am behind my back? The gasps from the crowd were audible. Heads turned toward Dominic, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the ground. Several people pulled out their phones, either to record the drama or to start texting the news to people who weren't there. "That's not," Alicia started, but I held up my hand. "I have the emails, Alicia, all of them. Every secret meeting, every lie you told me, every cruel joke at my expense. Would you like me to read some of them aloud?" "You went through my private communications?" Her shock was giving way to anger, which was exactly what I'd hoped for. Angry people make mistakes. "I went through communications on the laptop I helped pay for, in the house I helped buy, between my wife and my neighbor. Yeah, I'd say that gives me some rights." Mrs. Patterson was practically vibrating with excitement. This was the kind of neighborhood drama she lived for, the story she'd be telling for years to come. Richard stepped forward, his face a mixture of shock and concern. "Maybe we should all give you two some privacy to work this out." "No," I said firmly. "Privacy is what got us here. Privacy is what allowed this to go on for months while I was made to look like an idiot. I think it's time for a little transparency." I swiped to the next screenshot on my phone. Here's a good one. From 3 weeks ago, Dominic asking if I suspect anything, and my loving wife responding, "Jake's too stupid to figure it out. He believes whatever I tell him." Dominic finally found his voice. "Look, man, I never meant for it to happen this way. It just what? You just accidentally started having an affair with my wife? You just accidentally made plans to break up my marriage? You just accidentally spent months lying to my face while plotting behind my back? Jake, you don't understand. Alicia and I, we have a real connection. Something deeper than what? Than 12 years of marriage. Than the vows we made in front of God and everyone we cared about. Than the life we built together." I turned back to the crowd, many of whom were now openly staring at their phones, no doubt sharing this drama with the entire town in real time. "But here's the really beautiful part," I continued. "They thought they were so clever, so careful, making sure all their meetings were when I was supposedly out of town or busy with work, except I wasn't out of town last Saturday. I was right here, watching." The crowd turned to look at Dominic's house, then back at me. The implications were sinking in. 3 hours, I said, in broad daylight, while the whole neighborhood could have seen them. That's how little respect they had for me, for our marriage, for all of you who considered us friends. Alicia was crying now, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of rage and humiliation, the tears of someone whose carefully constructed facade was crumbling in public. "You're destroying everything," she hissed at me. "Our reputation, our friendships, our future, for what? To make yourself feel better?" "I'm not destroying anything," I replied calmly. "I'm just revealing what was already destroyed. The only difference is that now everyone knows the truth instead of just you and your lover." Tom appeared at my elbow, his face grim but supportive. "You need me to clear everyone out?" "Not yet. I'm not quite finished." I turned back to Alicia, who was now standing alone as the crowd had unconsciously shifted away from her. Even Dominic had taken a step back, probably realizing that his construction worker charm wasn't going to get him out of this one. "You want to know what my big announcement was going to be?" I asked her. "I was going to surprise you with a renewal of our wedding vows. I thought maybe if I made a grand gesture, showed everyone how much I loved you, we could get back what we'd lost." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Several people in the crowd made small sounds of sympathy or dismay. "But then I found your emails," I continued, "and I realized that what we'd lost was never coming back. Because you never wanted it back. You wanted something else, someone else, and you were willing to lie and cheat and humiliate me to get it. Jake, please, we can work this out. Go inside, talk privately. Don't air our dirty laundry in front of everyone." "Our dirty laundry? This isn't our anything, Alicia. This is your choice. Your betrayal. Your mess. I'm just making sure everyone knows who made it." I looked around at the faces in the crowd. Some shocked, some sympathetic, some clearly uncomfortable but unable to look away. Mrs. Patterson was taking mental notes that would fuel neighborhood gossip for months. "So, here's my announcement," I said, raising my voice to make sure everyone could hear. "I'm filing for divorce. I'm keeping the house that I've been paying for. I'm keeping the cars that are in my name. And I'm keeping whatever dignity I have left by refusing to pretend that this marriage is worth saving." The silence that followed was deafening. No one seemed to know what to say or do. This wasn't the kind of neighborhood drama they were used to. This was real, raw, and irreversible. Finally, Dominic cleared his throat. "Maybe I should go." "Yeah," I said, not looking at him. "Maybe you should. And maybe you should think about finding a new neighborhood while you're at it, because I have a feeling you're not going to be very welcome around here anymore." He left without another word, pushing through the crowd like a man fleeing a crime scene, which in a way he was. Alicia stood there for another moment, tears streaming down her face, looking around at the neighbors who had been her friends and social circle. The same people she'd been trying to impress for years were now staring at her with a mixture of pity and judgment. "I hope you are proud of yourself," she said to me, her voice shaking with fury. "This is cruel and petty and beneath you." "No," I replied quietly. "What's beneath me is what you did. This is just me refusing to be your victim anymore." She turned and walked toward the house, her head held high despite everything. I had to admire her composure, even as I despised her actions. She'd always been good at playing a role, and now she was playing the wronged woman forced to endure her husband's public humiliation. But the performance fell flat. Everyone had heard the truth. Everyone knew who the real victim was. As the crowd began to disperse, people approached me with awkward words of support and sympathy. Mrs. Patterson patted my arm and promised to keep an eye on the house. Richard offered to help me find a good lawyer. Tom just stood beside me, solid and supportive, letting me know I wasn't alone. "You okay?" he asked when the last of the neighbors had gone home. "I will be," I said. And for the first time in months, I actually believed it. The house felt different when I walked back inside. Lighter somehow, as if a weight I'd been carrying for months had finally been lifted. Alicia was in the bedroom, packing a suitcase with sharp, angry movements. "Where will you go?" I asked from the doorway. "Susie's, until I can figure out what comes next." "And Dominic?" She paused in her packing. "What about him? Are you going to keep seeing him, now that it's all out in the open?" "I don't know. Maybe. Does it matter?" "Not to me. I just wondered if you'd thought about what happens next. Whether your grand romance can survive being exposed to daylight." She zipped up the suitcase with more force than necessary, her movements sharp, deliberate, as though each motion was a statement of defiance. "You know what, Jake?" She spat, her voice quivering with a mix of anger and something else I couldn't quite place. "You think you've won something here today. You think you've gotten your revenge, and that somehow you've proven your point. But all you've really done, all you've really shown, is just how small and petty you are. You've demonstrated to everyone who's been watching, that you're the kind of man who would rather destroy his wife in front of the entire world than do the hard, uncomfortable work of trying to save his marriage in private. You're the type to let your pride drive the bus, even if it means crashing everything in your path." I stood there, feeling my pulse quicken with each word she threw at me, but I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I watched her, her eyes fiery, her shoulders tense under the strain of everything we'd been through. Her fingers curled around the suitcase handle, knuckles turning white, as if holding on to some last bit of control, some small shred of dignity. "Save our marriage?" I finally found my voice, and it was colder than I intended. "When exactly was I supposed to do that? Before or after you and Dominic finished planning the most humiliating moment of my life?" My words were sharp, but the bitterness was undeniable. I wasn't angry at her. No, I was furious at what we'd become, at what she'd allowed to happen. She didn't have the decency to answer me. Instead, she grabbed her suitcase with an almost robotic efficiency and turned toward the door. She paused at the threshold, her hand hovering over the knob for just a second longer than necessary. Her eyes flicked back to me, and there it was again. Hatred, sadness, a swirling mess of conflicting emotions in her gaze. She opened her mouth, and what came out was the last thing I expected to hear. "This isn't over," she said, her voice lower now, less assured, but still biting. "You may have won today, but divorce is a long process. And I'm a lawyer, remember? I know exactly how to fight. You haven't seen anything yet." She held my gaze for a beat. Then she stepped out into the night without looking back. I stood there, rooted to the spot for a moment. Then the weight of the words hit me all at once, like a wave crashing down over my chest. I exhaled slowly, my breath shaky. The house felt different. It felt empty. It was quieter than I'd ever known it to be, but it wasn't the kind of quiet I was used to. It wasn't the deafening, oppressive silence that seemed to grow with every passing day, every tense moment between us. No, this silence felt different. It was the quiet that comes before something new, something uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, it felt like possibility. The phone in my pocket buzzed to life, vibrating against the countertop. I grabbed it and unlocked the screen. The usual flood of messages came through, friends checking in, neighbors offering support, even a few random acquaintances who'd heard about the spectacle that had played out earlier in the afternoon. But as I scrolled through, one message caught my eye. A simple text from Mickey, the guy from the boxing gym. the one who'd been nudging me for months to stand up for myself. His message made me grin despite everything. "Hey, man, heard you finally threw that punch we talked about. How'd it feel?" I didn't even have to think about it. My fingers flew over the screen, typing the answer that felt right. Like winning. Because in that moment, that's exactly what it felt like. It felt like victory. Not over her, not over anyone else, but over myself. For the first time in my life, I had stood up for what I believed in, for who I was. I had stepped out from the shadow of my own insecurities and refused to let anyone dictate my story anymore. I had stopped being the victim, the fool who didn't know any better. I had taken control, grabbed my life by the reins, and dared to believe that maybe, just maybe, I deserved more than this. The evening sky outside had begun to shift, the sun sinking lower, painting everything in shades of gold, amber, and deep orange. Tomorrow, I knew, would bring more of the same. The endless paperwork, the endless legalese, the never-ending mess of divorce settlements and asset divisions. There would be no escaping that. But tonight, right now, I could ignore it all. I could put it off. Tonight, I was going to sit on my deck, sip a cold beer, and let the silence fill the spaces in my mind. I could savor the calm, feel the weight of my new reality settle over me. The recall notice had been served. The defective product had been returned. And Jake the underachiever? He was finally free to become whoever he wanted to be next. The possibilities were endless.